What's up everyone? Alex here. I hope that you weren't thinking that I was just gonna let the Live Alive demo slip by without me talking about it. I've been waiting for Live Alive to officially release in the West since the fan translations came out more than a decade ago, and I finally got a chance to sit down and play the recently released demo. And I gotta tell ya, it's everything I ever wanted. So I wanted to make this video to not only provide some added context that'll help you appreciate the game's historical significance, but also provide additional commentary on why you should play this long-awaited masterpiece. But in order for us to talk about what it is today, we have to take a look at it from decades past, the 90s to be precise. Live Alive was originally released for the Super Famicom in Japan in 1994 and never released outside of that region. Reviewers of the time criticized it for being shorter, easier, and less flashy when compared to Squaresoft's other titles of that era, with Famitsu delivering the ultimate kibosh and awarding it with a 29 out of 40 and selling a paltry 270,000 copies, a failure in the eyes of its publisher. That being said, Live Alive became a seminal title for at least two of its staff members in many ways. For one, Live Alive is Takashi Tokita's directorial debut, and if you don't know who that is, that's okay, because chances are you might have heard of two of the other games he's directed. Oh, just Chrono Trigger and Parasite Eve, no big deal. And if you've experienced both games, you'll probably see a lot of their DNA in Live Alive. Another staff member who benefited from their experience with Live Alive is none other than Yoko Shimomura, who's recently known for her work in the Kingdom Hearts series and Final Fantasy XV. Live Alive was Yoko Shimomura's first full soundtrack credit at Squaresoft and the first RPG soundtrack she's ever composed. Prior to Squaresoft, Shimomura worked at Capcom, where she contributed tracks for Street Fighter II and Breath of Fire. During her time at Capcom, we all know that she's best known for her work with Guile's theme, but there's one other song that she composed whose DNA made its way into Live Alive. Check this out. Yeah, that's definitely the first thing I thought of when I heard this song too. While the creation of Live Alive surely gave both Takashi Tokita and Yoko Shimomura a start on their journey to become legends, the game itself became something of a cult classic to fans of RPGs, and is widely considered as one of the most ambitious games in the genre, despite its early criticisms. And anyone who decided to download the recently released demo will clearly see this ambition throughout their entire experience. My demo playthrough took me about 2 hours total to get through the first chapters of all three characters, and those first chapters are pretty much what you get in the demo. Going into it, I was expecting my experience to feel very much like Saga Frontier or even Octopath Traveler to a degree, where characters serve as multiple starting points with a convergence point soon after. What I played shocked me. Instead of a very samey experience across all three characters, I not only got three distinct storylines set in three eras, but these stories were told in very different ways, whether it's through unique time periods and locales, variances in its gameplay, and gimmicks that really help make each experience feel truly unique. Of the three available routes in the demo, the one that closely resembled a traditional RPG path was the one set in Imperial China, where you get to play as a kung fu master. Now, because there's only one chapter in the demo, I won't go into detail in its story, but if you can imagine playing a kung fu movie, that's literally what's going to happen to you in this scenario. What's also very fascinating about this is that Live Alive doesn't hold your hand too much, which allows you to explore wherever you want, which is great because this scenario actually has small confined areas so you don't get lost. There is a radar that kind of helps you orient yourself, but it's still obtuse enough because of its limited range and its lack of terrain representation. It's kind of a strange thing to work with at first, but I found it to be a clever way to nudge you in the right direction. In terms of battles, one of the interesting things that I found is that the enemies are on screen, so there are no random battles, at least in the scenarios I played. And enemies can be kited, and in one other scenario that I'll talk about later, he has a way to avoid battle in a very unique way. Now, I will say that the battle system can be confusing, so I'll try to explain it to the best of my ability. Though at first glance, you'll notice that it is a tactical style game set on a grid with each participant in battle having both a health and an ATB-like bar. I think the better way to describe this meter is that it is a turn meter, as the meter doesn't actually increment if you do nothing. It only increments when you do something, whether it's moving your character around the grid or initiating an attack. Because of this design, what this actually means is that you can essentially kite enemies all around the grid so that when they fill their turn meter, they'll completely waste their turn, at which point you can kind of close in on them and attack them when their turn meter drops. And if you can kind of imagine what's going on, it's kind of like a poke mechanic. When you notice, like, if enemies are about to lose their turn, you kind of approach them, poke them, and then run away. It's very similar to like poking in fighting games. If this battle system is sounding familiar to you, it's because it's very similar to the battle system in Parasite Eve, except it's not in real time, where you can dodge attacks, then find openings, and then execute actions. As far as the attacks go, they aren't your typical linear attacks that emanate from your character. It can be a wide variety of patterns, and learning them becomes key when formulating your strategies. And there are even some attacks that require people to charge, meaning they won't be able to move for a period of time, so you gotta be careful. Optionally, when you find that your starting character or current character is a point of weakness during battle, you can also pass your turn to another character so that they can take their turns instead. Admittedly, the tutorial does not do a good job of explaining all of this, so if you want me to make a guide on how this all works, please let me know in the comments below. I really love this battle system, so any way that I can help you understand it would be something that I'd love to do. After completing the scenario in Imperial China, I moved on to the distant future, where I got to play a sentient robot. What was really curious about all this is that there were no battles at all, at least not ones where you can stumble upon. There is an arcade machine that lets you take part in combat, but otherwise, the scenario's protagonist didn't even have accessible equipment options, at least not in this chapter. To my understanding, this is a fully narrative-driven experience, which helped immerse me in the daily goings-on with this ship's crew. I thought that this was really gutsy for Live Alive to have a narrative-driven first chapter for this scenario, which made me really curious about the last playable chapter in the demo. And this last chapter is set in Twilight Edo, Japan, where you play as a ninja, which means you are given the option to either attack people head-on or use stealth. Now, stealth in RPGs are usually a hit or miss, so admittedly I was a little concerned. But they nailed it. Being this ninja makes you feel like you're infiltrating a highly fortified territory. And your character also has a mechanic that lets you hide in plain sight of enemies, which momentarily confuses them in place and allows you to run around them. There are also passwords that you'll have to keep track so you can blend in with some of the soldiers, and peepholes where you can spy and gain information on what's happening. And it's really funny is there was this potentially inappropriate one that I saw in the peepholes. Like, sure, you're just quote-unquote spinning her around. Of course, I'm making air quotes here. What's really interesting about the scenario as well is that battles are completely optional. Like, the enemies are all on screen, but you don't have to engage in any battles at all if you wanted to. But if you do, the ninja has this really cool ability where he can lay like a fire floor, and anybody who's caught in it will deal damage over time, unfortunately including yourself. I actually defeated a samurai by kiting him across the fire carpet, and it was so cool and very satisfying, but right after that the game is like, you killed one person, and I'm like, oh no, does that matter? For some reason that kind of shocked me when I saw that. What I also noticed is that the level design for this particular scenario feels more open, with what seems like multiple pathways. Now granted, I haven't really gone back in to see like if there are multiple pathways, but it's still really cool that it feels that way just because of the way that they designed the mechanics and how everything intertwines. It's just really cool. Ultimately though, what struck me with this demo is the wide variety of gameplay options that just uses the actual form and function of Japanese-style RPGs, which admittedly, at least for me, is something that I've never seen since. It does make me wonder though how Live Alive will implement these types of gameplay mechanics in other eras. Like, for example, how would they handle a Western duel? The possibilities are just potentially really cool. All that said, I highly recommend checking out the Live Alive demo, which is out right now on the Nintendo Switch. And just FYI, this game is being published by Nintendo and is coming out on July 22nd on the Nintendo Switch. Honestly, I can't believe that we're getting Live Alive this month, and it's literally one of my most anticipated games of all time, and I could not believe, even to this day, that we're finally getting it. I am so happy we're finally getting it. I can't wait to play the full game. But I want to hear what you think. What do you think of Live Alive using RPG mechanics and utilizing them in unique and creative ways? Do these unique concepts appeal to you? What do you think of it? Post your thoughts in the comments below and let's talk about it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.